Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. This is Mason Zero ASMR, and today we are looking at another Magic the Gathering deck. This one is for Commander, and it is Estrid the Masked. This Commander came with the Commander 2018 preconstructed decks, but this is my own version of that deck. While it does have many elements of that precon still in it, I did change it quite a bit. So this is a Bant enchantments deck, or enchantments if you want to get clever. And it's a lot of fun. I'd say overall, it's a pretty straightforward enchantments deck. It's focused on grinding out value, making the game go a little longer, and then kind of winning with a giant swing of damage, preferably. There's some control elements to it, certainly. So Estrid the Masked is a 3 loyalty legendary planeswalker Estrid. She costs 1 generic, a green, a white, and a blue. Her +2 is untap each enchanted permanent you control. Her -1 is create a white aura enchantment token named Mask attached to another target permanent. The token has enchant permanent and totem armor. And then -7, put the top 7 cards of your library into your graveyard. Return all non-aura enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then do the same for aura cards. So realistically, when I play this deck, I actually don't care too much about the commander. This really benefits more a deck that is based on doing auras, which this one really is not. This is more of a normal enchantments based deck. It does have some auras, but really not a lot. I do like minusing to create the mask for important creatures, but honestly, the +2 isn't that useful. The -7 is great, but you have to +2 a few times to get there. So I try not to rely too much on the commander. And then here, of course, are the mask tokens, as well as some other ones. So I will start with creatures, even though enchantments make up the bulk of this deck. And I'll start with the creatures that are more value-based and are not here for enchantment purposes. The first one is Stoic Angel. This is a 3/4 for 1, a green, a white, and a blue for a creature angel with flying and vigilance. Players can't untap more than 1 creature during their untap steps. This is one of those control cards, but really doesn't necessarily go into the main theme of the deck at all. It'd probably be cut before most cards if I had a new thing to play. Acidic Slime is just a solid commander card. 5 mana for a 2/2 with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. Obviously, that's nice to have, but that's it. Nyx Fleece Ram, it is an enchantment itself, which of course helps, but it's just a 2 mana 0/5, and at the beginning of your upkeep you gain 1 life. That's just nice to have. But other than being an enchantment, it doesn't really do much else. Archetype of Imagination is 6 mana for a 3/2 enchantment creature. But creatures you control have flying, and creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. It's of course awesome that this is an enchantment itself, but this is mostly here for the control aspect. We can give our creatures flying if we have them, and then our opponents can't have flying, so it's very nice to have. This is pretty much onto the enchantment matters. This one's kind of a bridge between that. Arbiter of the Ideal. It's 6 mana for a 4/5 with flying. And whenever it becomes untapped, we reveal the top card of our library. If it's an artifact, creature, or land card, we may put it onto the battlefield with a manifestation counter on it. That permanent is an enchantment in addition to its other types. I feel like we're more than likely to flip over an enchantment, but this is an interesting way to turn some of our non-enchantments into enchantments. But I think most likely this card would get cut for a better card pretty quickly. I just find it an interesting take. Celestial Archon is 5 mana for a 4/4 enchantment creature with flying and first strike. It also has Bestow for 7, so we can treat it as an aura, and the enchanted creature would get +4/+4 flying and first strike. So this is one of those sort of endgame cards that can help us win the game. Then we have Silent Sentinel, which is also big and expensive. It's 7 mana for a 4/6 flyer. When it attacks, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is a very, very, very nice effect in this deck, because some of these enchantments send themselves to the graveyard, some of them are going to get destroyed anyways, and this is one of those key cards for getting them back. Now we're actually to our first card that was in the pre-constructed deck, I think. Oh no, I guess the archetype was. But Nylea's Colossus. It's 7 mana for a 6/6 enchantment creature. When it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. So this is another one of those potential win conditions. Doubling the power and toughness of something important can be pretty awesome. So yeah, this is the top end. It's going to help us out a lot. Eidolon of Blossoms, very key card in a strategy like this. 4 mana for a 2/2 enchantment creature. When it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Just such a nice card, and we here have this shiny buy a box promo with Seb McKinnon art. Very pretty. Satyr Enchanter is one of many so-called enchantress effects in this deck. Basically, when you cast or when an enchantment enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So this is 3 mana for a 2/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. We're going to be drawing a lot of cards in this deck. Here's one of the original enchantresses, Verduran Enchantress. It's 3 mana for a 0/2. Whenever you play an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. So, same effect. Yeah, this one's one of the older ones. Monk Idealist, 3 mana for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. Once again, a recursion spell for our enchantments. Very useful to have. This deck is all about grinding out that value. Ajani's Chosen. It's 4 mana for a 3/3. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white cat creature token. If that enchantment is an aura, you may attach it to the token. Most likely that enchantment will not be an aura and we will not be attaching it, but this is a repeatable token generator that can get some extra value out of the enchantments we're playing. Yavimaya Enchantress is 2 and a green for a 2/2 that gets +1/+1 for each enchantment on the battlefield. It's one of those old cards that cares about what your opponents have too. So if your opponents are playing enchantments, this can be really big. It is just common here, so no evasion or trample or anything. But that's why we have cards like Whitewater Naiads. 5 mana for a 4/4 enchantment creature. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So that's how we win some of our big guys like Yavimaya Enchantress. Hannah Ship's Navigator, 3 mana for a 1/2. You can pay 3 mana and tap it to return target artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. So once again, another enchantment recursion spell. This one's repeatable. Herald of the Pantheon is 1 and a green for a 2/2. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life. I'm a big fan of this card. Gains us some life to keep us alive, and it reduces the most common type of card in our deck. So this is a very key card that I'm always happy to draw. Tuvasa the Sunlit is another one of the face cards from the pre-built deck. It's 3 mana for a 1/1, but it gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control, and whenever you cast your first enchantment spell each turn, draw a card. So it's partly a win condition through combat, and it's partially just a card draw value engine. Mesa Enchantress is 3 mana for a 0/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. This is the white shifted version of Verduran Enchantress, of course. So more of those effects. Oratog is 2 mana for a 1/2. Sacrifice an enchantment. Oratog gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This is another one of those potential win conditions through combat. If everyone's tapped out and we go to attack with something like that, that could be big, but it's kind of an all or nothing deal unless we can get our enchantments back. Speaking of enchantments, we are now moving on to the enchantments in this deck. Our first one is Market Festival, which is 4 mana for an enchant land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds 2 mana in any combination of colors to their mana pool. So this is a bit expensive for this effect, but it makes a land tap for 3 mana, which is pretty crazy. So that's a good ramp spell for us to have that is enchantment based. Suspension Field is a control card, 2 mana. When Suspension Field enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature with toughness 3 or greater until it leaves the battlefield. And we have the Friday Night promo here. More Seb McKinnon promo art. Nice foil in there. But yeah, a lot of things in Commander are big, so it's a good card to have. Sandworm Convergence, I really like this card, but it is 8 mana for an enchantment. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, and at the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. So prevents some attacks, and that also makes tokens. And just a big old enchantment. Mana Bloom is an interesting one. It costs X and a green. Mana Bloom enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it. Remove a charge counter from Mana Bloom. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Activate this ability only once each turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Mana Bloom has no charge counters on it, return it to its owner's hand. So this is an interesting way to kind of get an extra mana every turn, invest in it early, and then use it later. But what I'm more interested in using it for is repeatable enchantment enter the battlefield effects for 1 mana. Pretty much every turn you can spend 1 mana to get any number of triggers that you need, which is kind of nice, and then you'll be able to return it to your hand because there won't be any counters on it on the next upkeep. Everwatching Threshold, 3 mana. Whenever an opponent attacks you and or a planeswalker you control with 1 or more creatures, draw a card. Unfortunately, this just reads, if you get attacked, draw a card. It's not based on how many creatures there are or anything like that. But it certainly helps us get value, so I can't deny that it's a useful card to have in the deck. Cast Out is 4 mana for an enchantment with Flash. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Cast Out leaves the battlefield, and it has cycling for 1 white. This is a more expensive version of some of these effects, but the fact that it has cycling is very nice. Sometimes you just don't have a use for this, or it's early game, so I'm a big fan of Cast Out, especially in this deck. Curse of Bounty, 2 mana for an enchantment or a curse with enchant player. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, untap all non-land permanents you control. Each opponent attacking that player untaps all non-land permanents he or she controls. So in a multiplayer game, this is awesome for taking the blame, or not the blame, taking the attention off of you and kind of making someone attack somebody else by enchanting them with this. So if they want to untap their stuff, they can attack the person you've enchanted. In 1v1, which is how I play a lot of the time, it's just kind of more mana for everybody. Octopus Umbra is a 5 mana aura with enchant creature. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness 8/8, and has whenever this creature attacks, you may tap target creature with power 8 or less. And it has totem armor, which means if the enchanted creature be destroyed, you remove all the damage and destroy this aura instead. So it's a costly aura, but it's pretty good. It can tap down a giant blocker and make this thing that it's enchanted huge and protect it as well, which is a common problem with auras. Ixalan's Binding is 3 and white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. Your opponents can't cast spells with the same name as the exiled card. Obviously, this is best in a multiplayer game. Enchanting something like Soul Ring, or something that's going to be in everyone's deck, is ideal. Curse of Exhaustion. 4 mana for an aura curse. Enchanted player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. This is another one of those control cards. It's not very nice, but it's a good control card to help slow the game down. Seal of Cleansing. 2 mana, sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. This is one of the best cards to recur with some of those enchantment recursion effects, because you can just keep reusing this to blow up your opponent's stuff. Soul Snare is 1 mana. Pay 1 white, sacrifice it, exile target creature that's attacking you or a planeswalker you control. Yeah, same thing. If you can reuse this, it's just really good. Bounty of the Luxa is another enchantment that I'm a fan of. It's 4 mana. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, remove all flood counters from it. If no counters are removed this way, put a flood counter on it and draw a card. Otherwise, add colorless green-blue to your mana pool. So draws cards, adds mana. It's just kind of a funky card to play with. I personally like it. Font of Fertility. Got a promo here, nice and shiny. And it's 1 green, and you can pay a green and a generic and sacrifice it to search for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Not the most impressive rate, but it gets us a enchantment trigger at any stage in the game when we draw it, and potentially repeatable if we have recursion effects. Overgrowth. 3 mana, enchant land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, it produces an additional green-green. Another one of those mana-producing effects on an enchantment, which is preferable to regular land ramp in a lot of cases. Reverence is an interesting one. It's 4 mana. Creatures with power 2 or less can't attack you. This one's kind of a corner case, but if we're against goblins or something like that, it could potentially serve a purpose. If not, it's just another enchantment trigger. Monastery Siege is a card I like a lot. It's 3 mana. You choose Khans or Dragons when it enters the battlefield. Khans is at the beginning of your draw step, draw additional card, then discard a card, and Dragons is spells your opponents cast that target you or a permanent you control, cost 2 more to cast. In general, you want to be choosing Khans. I think everyone kind of agrees on that for this card, but it's, of course, situational. Finest Hour is an interesting card that's potentially a win condition, especially in combination with any giant cards, any giant creatures. It's 5 mana, has Exalted, so whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And whenever a creature you control attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap that creature and there is an additional combat phase. So, very interesting card, but you do need to have a creature that can get through. Zendikar Resurgent is 7 mana. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any type that land produced. And whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. This is one of my favorite cards in Commander. It's 7 mana, but once you have this out, you can pretty much do whatever you want. So, deserves a spot in this deck for sure. Banishing Light is 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. There's been a lot of these effects in this deck, as you may have seen. Starfield of Nyx is one of the win conditions. It's 5 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. First of all, awesome, I'd play it just for that. But it also has, as long as you control 5 or more enchantments, each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature in addition to its other types. It has base power and base toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost. So if we play this and have a bunch of enchantments, all of our enchantments become creatures, and we can start recurring things. It's just really good. Myth Realized is 1 mana. Whenever you cast it on creature spell, which includes enchantments, put a lore counter on it, or you can pay 3 to put a lore counter on it, and you can pay 1, and until end of turn, it becomes a monk avatar creature in addition to its other types, and gains this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lore counters on it. A very interesting card. The fact that it can sort of become a win condition, or at least put pressure on the opponent, is nice. It's kind of like an enchantment creature that is protected some of the time. Estrid's Invocation, 3 mana. You may have it enter as a copy of any enchantment you control. Except it gains at the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile this enchantment. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So basically, it comes in as a copy, but then every upkeep you get to decide if you want to turn it into a different enchantment you have, which is really nice. It's very versatile. One of our few creature auras is Ancestral Mask, which costs 3 mana. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. This card has won me games with this deck multiple times. It's like if someone can't deal with it and you put it on the right creature, it's just ridiculous. Enchantress's Presence, one of the best reprints from this deck. It's 3 mana. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. So it's one of those Enchantress effects, but on an enchantment itself. Angelic Renewal is 2 mana. Whenever a creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may sacrifice Angelic Renewal. If you do, return that card to the battlefield. Another fun card with enchantment recursion. I can imagine bringing this back every turn with Starfield of Nyx or something. Sigil of the Empty Throne, another potential win condition. Very good card that I like playing. 5 mana. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Do that a few times and you have a veritable threat in the sky. Quarantine Field is another kind of last-ditch effort removal card. Costs XX white. It enters the battlefield with X isolation counters on it. When Quarantine Field enters the battlefield, for each isolation counter on it, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Quarantine Field leaves the battlefield. Dictate of Krufix is 3 mana with Flash. At the beginning of each opponent's draw step, that player draws an additional card. So more card draw, except this one works for both players. Since it has Flash, it's obviously better to wait until the last possible second and cast it so that you are the first person to draw a card off of it. That is always the ideal with this card. And then our last enchantment is Imprisoned in the Moon. 3 mana, enchant creature, land, or planeswalker. Enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap, add colorless to your mana pool, and loses all other card types and abilities. This is kind of just a catch-all aura that can get rid of problematic permanents. Always nice to have this. Like, yes, it gives them a land, but it's probably better than what they had before. Just a few spells. We of course have Counterspell, which is 2 mana, counter target spell. We're playing blue, so we might as well be playing this. Swords to Plowshares, more creature removal. 1 mana, exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. Having these 1 mana removals are good. For sorceries, our first one is Krufix's Insight, 3 mana. Reveal the top 6 cards of your library, put up to 3 enchantments from among them into your hand, and the rest of the revealed cards into your graveyard. So potentially drawing 3 cards. Not bad for 3 mana. Similarly, Commune with the Gods is 2 mana. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or enchantment card from among them into your hand, put the rest into your graveyard. So those 2 effects are sort of our card draw, but mostly just for enchantments. Cultivate is 3 mana. Search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, put one onto the battlefield tapped, the other into your hand. Ramp spells are, of course, always necessary. Profound Journey is a rather expensive recursion spell, but it's 7 mana. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has rebound, so you get to do it twice. This can bring back big, key, important enchantments in the late game, so I am a fan. Kodama's Reach is the same as Cultivate, so 3 mana, search for 2 basics, reveal them, put one into play tapped, and the other into your hand. Open the Vaults is one of my favorite cards in this deck. 6 mana, return all artifact and enchantment cards from all graveyards to the battlefield under their owner's control. This will probably benefit us more than our opponents, so we get to get all our enchantments back. So definitely one of the best cards available to us. Then we have Plea for Guidance, which is 6 mana. Search your library for up to 2 enchantment cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. It's kind of a high mana cost tutor, but it's what's in my personal budget. And you get to get 2, so that's fine. Now we have a few artifacts. Of course, Soul Ring, which is 1 mana for an artifact that can tap to add 2. Commander's Sphere, 3 mana, tap to add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity, and then sacrifice it to draw a card. So that's our mana. We have a couple enchantment-based artifacts. Crystal Chimes is 3 mana. You can pay 3, tap, and sacrifice it to return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to your hand. Not as powerful as Open the Vaults, but similar effect. Helm of the Gods can also help us win the game through combat. It's a 1 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control, and it has equip 1. That's all the non-lands. So, quickly go through the lands. Windswept Heath is our only normal fetch land in here. Croson Verge is a budget fetch that lets us pay 2 and tap to get a forest and a plains card. Evolving Wilds, the cheap fetch, obviously, and then Panorama, taps for colorless, or we can pay 1, tap, and sacrifice to get a basic forest, plains, or island. Seaside Citadel, enters tapped, taps for any of the Bant colors. Glacial Fortress is a check land that taps for white or blue. Temple of Enlightenment is a scry land, taps for white or blue. Irrigated Farmland is a cycle land that taps for white or blue and is a plains island itself. Canopy Vista is a Battle for Zendikar land, taps for green or white and is a forest plains. Simic Growth Chamber adds green and blue and is a bounce land. Temple Garden is the green-white shock land that is a forest plains. Command Tower, of course, comes in untapped and taps for any color. Temple of Plenty is the green-white scry land. Selesnya Sanctuary is the green-white bounce land. Azorius Chancery is the white-blue bounce land. Scattered Groves is the green-white forest plains cycling land. Temple of Mystery is the green-blue scryland, so we got plenty of scrylands. Stirring Wildwood is a creature land, enters tapped, taps for green or white, and you can pay 3 to have it become a 3/4 green and white elemental creature with reach until end of turn. And then to round it out, we have a few colorless utility lands. Forge of Heroes taps for colorless, or you can tap to choose commander and put a counter on it, in this case a loyalty counter, which is kind of nice. Reliquary Tower, you can tap it for colorless and you have no maximum hand size, which is relevant in this deck. Gavany Township, you can tap for colorless and you can also pay 4 and tap to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Not the most relevant to this deck, but I have this land in no other deck that it's necessarily that great in, so I figured it would be worthwhile to put it in this deck for the time being. This card just came out in Modern Horizons in its Hall of Heliod's Generosity. It's a legendary land that taps for colorless, and you can pay 1 and a white and tap it to put a enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library. So more recursion that is repeatable. Unfortunately, it doesn't return to hand, but it's still recursion. I believe this is the only card from Modern Horizons that made its way in this deck for me. And then for basic lands, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 forests. And 1, 2, 3 islands. So guys, that is my Estrid the Masked Commander deck. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for this deck, I would love to hear them. They might be ones I've already considered, but just haven't for budget reasons or whatever. But I would still love to hear your suggestions, directions you think this deck could go, and cards I might be missing. Let me know if you are playing Estrid the Masked or another enchantments deck, any of the alternate commanders by chance. And if you don't, let me know what commanders you do play, if you play. So, subscribe if you haven't already as well. I always appreciate that. I make other commander and magic content in addition to other things, so stick around for more. Now I'll see all you guys in the next video. Have a relaxing day or night, and goodbye.